Next we have Paula. Would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much again for inviting me. Shall I carry on sitting here?
Yeah, do sit. I'm going to change the slides over.
I've got my back to you.
No.
So, I'm a philosopher, but I've done an awful lot of interdisciplinary work on questions in ethics. So in the past I've looked a lot at questions in medical ethics, for example, and I've worked on projects relating to clinical genetics and genomics technology. And I've been working in the computer science department at Oxford University since 2015 on issues around AI and ethics. Originally, the work I've been doing has been funded by the Future of Life Institute, which some of you may know. It's a US-based institute. They gave out a lot of awards in 2015 for research on various aspects of trying to develop beneficial AI. And I've been working on that. And I've been working in particular on a project looking at the possibilities for developing codes of ethics in AI. And part of the rationale for our project was actually the very fact that I'd previously done work in medical ethics and in the development of genomics technology to see how we could compare and contrast those issues with issues in AI and what we might in fact be able to learn from thinking in medical ethics. And actually a lot of the things I was thinking about echo very much many of the things that Imogen has spoken about. So, for instance, medical ethics has got a much longer history, and a particular history of developed out of certain contexts of certain appalling things happening. But it's a much more, if you like, mature and nuanced way of thinking about things. Not that I'm saying it's perfect by any means, but for example, you have within medical ethics the presence of things like patient groups having certain opinions, bodies of disagreement within the practice of medicine, a long history of things like medical sociologists looking closely at the impact of medicine. So a much more diverse discipline of people looking at how we should think about the issues, which is precisely the sorts of things we need to develop further in AI. But actually, a lot of my time, we cunningly called the project towards a code of ethics for artificial intelligence, not promising anything in particular. And in fact, I have a book by that title available now on Amazon. But a lot of my work actually involved listening and reading about how people in AI were thinking about ethics and how people who work in ethics were thinking about AI and thinking about what kinds of questions weren't being focused on, what kinds of assumptions were being made. So that a lot of the work I've done in the book involves trying to enrich the talk about ethics in AI and fill in some background and try to broaden the questions. So as well as this work, at the same time I've been working at Cardiff University in the School of Healthcare Sciences with a research group who mostly are medical sociologists who do ethnographic work on the treatment of people living with dementia in hospital wards. The person leading that team is Katie Featherstone, who some of you may have seen recently because there was a project, a research report in her last project, which was the subject of a Radio 5 Live documentary recently about some of the problems with how people with dementia experience hospital care. And this work may seem a million miles away from AI, but there are really significant overlaps. And I love working on both things at the same time because it's so grounded. It's like going through the mirror, going from one place to another. So my work there focuses on how philosophical notions of a person translate into policies, for example, policies around how we respect the person in healthcare, and then how that ends up into the realities of the delivery of care on hospital wards. So much of this work then involves looking at how we conceptualise the person, what's valuable about the person, human relationships, and continuing identity of a person over time. And in fact, when we look at questions around artificial intelligence, the ethical questions around AI, we need to ask precisely these sorts of questions as well. So in order to investigate the ethical issues that AI raises, we need to ask specifically questions like, why would we want to use AI to replace or to supplement, to augment or to enhance human agency, thought and decision? It's a question which I think the answers we're going to get and the things we're going to look at depend very much on how precisely we frame the questions. So people in ethics often will look at, oh, what are the benefits and disbenefits of using this particular form of AI? But if we ask the question, why would we want to use AI to replace humans? Why would we want to use AI to enhance humans? We have to ask questions, normative questions about human beings. We have to ask comparative questions about humans and machines and about the place of humans in the social and natural order of things. So, for example, in order to claim that artificial intelligence is enhancing human thought and decision making or enhancing human agency, we need a normative account of human agency, because something only counts as an enhancement if it can be seen, at the very least, to have more benefit than disbenefit, but also in relation to the ideas of the virtues and good qualities of the being or the thing being enhanced. Otherwise, it's a change, but not necessarily an enhancement. I mean, a stupid idea I used last week in a talk, inspired by the fact I got a pet tortoise, was that, I mean, a tortoise hasn't got any hair, but if you put a wig on a tortoise, it's not clear it's an enhancement. And even if you made the tortoise capable of calculating, looking up for train timetables, it might be useful to you, but it's not even clear that's an enhancement for a tortoise. The same sort of thing applies. The same sort of thing applies to humans. So I've come to the conclusion that in looking at the ethics of AI, we've got to look much more directly at questions about human nature and our place in the universe. And that's also particularly clear if you look at some of the more, what I might call, bearing in mind this is being live streamed, some of the more imaginative approaches to AI. So the sorts of things about the future and development of AI and of humans that people like Ray Kurzweil talk about, and Max Tegmark in his recent book, Human 3.0. So you can guess from the title that Human 3.0 says a lot about the development of humans. So, but also this leads a lot on to what AI means to me personally, which is one of the questions we were asked. So if I'm going to take a completely personal view about this, is that working on ethical issues in artificial intelligence has been almost indescribably interesting, because it might at first glance seem like a sort of technical, specific application of work in ethics, but actually AI is pushing us to ask some of the most fundamental questions in philosophy about how to live our lives. And it's also actually making ethics much more interesting, because I personally think that over the last few decades there has been a rise of work in what's become to be known as applied ethics, but I think there's a danger of it's become more and more attenuated to saying, oh, you've got consequentialism, you've got deontology, and trotting out an attenuated view of what the ethical issues are. And looking at AI can really help us to see we need to enrich this. So just to take one fairly concrete example, the prospect of technological unemployment. So regardless of whether predictions of widespread unemployment at the hands of AI come true or not, it still means that we need to ask the question, what do we do if we haven't got any work to do? What makes for a meaningful life? I also notice that the people who are pushing this, and sometimes even sort of hailing the prospect that we'll have millions of people living lives of endless leisure, are themselves, to a man, workaholics. And I'm quite certain that they're imagining that they will still be the CEOs of some vast company, and not themselves swanning around doing absolutely nothing while they claim universal income. So we need to, and even aside from a question of unemployment, we still have to ask the question, if a task can be outsourced to a machine, if it could be done more efficiently by a machine, we still need to ask the question, should we do that? So we still need to ask the question, how do we live a good human life? So I was also asked to talk about the key ethical and governance issues in AI. There are so many. I think one of the big problems with at least some forms of AI are the problems of transparency, the problems that we don't necessarily know exactly how it's working or how the decisions are reached. So there's a big problem of opacity. Now it's a central feature of ethics that we need to be able to explain our actions to people who are affected by our actions. This notion of accountability. So this feature of AI fits very, very poorly with this key feature of ethics, because I think we need to emphasise how ethics is first and foremost about relationships with other people, or with any other creature to whom we owe ethical responsibilities. And so precisely because of that problem about the difficulty of explaining some of AI, precisely also because of issues how the fact there's lots of AI embedded into stuff and we don't even know that it's there, the fact that AI and tech in general is not just altering our world, but it's affecting how we see the world. It's affecting what information comes our way. It's like our glasses. If you wear glasses, it's like it's shaping how we actually even view what the ethical issues are. So I think one of the key issues is this openness and transparency. One of the key issues is building up a citizenship of people who understand what the issues are and how they affect them. That's one of the key issues. So, and we can also look between, there are some people, well, there already have been attempts to produce overarching aspirational accounts of the ethics in AI, but in AI we need to be able to think about the ethical issues in ways that are going to be implemented and actually used. And in terms of how they're used, we can have fantastic codes of ethics which are completely ignored. My favourite example is always Enron, which had a fabulous code of ethics completely ignored because of institutional factors. So it's those wider institutional factors that we need to look at. And in AI, and actually as the recent House of Lords report also emphasised this as well, one of the big governance issues with AI is how it's dominated by a few very, very powerful tech companies. So that's another issue to do with transparency and opacity and issues of power, which also really need to be emphasised in AI. So yeah, and also I've often said people talk about things like that's not real AI, that's only an algorithm, that's only a bit of machine learning. That's very often the case, but I think these issues overlap because very, very often the same sorts of issues arise. So we need to look at how AI is embedded into the technology, computer technology more generally, and in particular in things like communications.
Thank you.